I'm gonna keep this one short. Hola todos. This is Internal Sadist. Let me keep this very short. Something I've noticed with it in America a lot is how people always talk about things like writing letters to the president or want to make a vocal letter or plea to the president of the United States and stuff along the lines of that. And it's great in theory, but at the end of the day, if you're going to be making any quotes or any letters to anybody, it should be your governors and senators. Your president can only suggest things to happen. It's up to your congressmen, senators, and governors to actually make that shit happen for the most part. So if your state's closed down, it's not the president's fault. It's your governor's fault. If your state is not funded properly, it's not your governor's fault. I mean, it's not your president's fault. It's your governor or senator's fault. If your city is still fucked up, it's not your president's fault. It's your governor, senator, or congressman's fault that it's fucked up. It's that simple. So if your state's still in lockdown, it's your governor or senator's fault that it's in lockdown. It's not the president of the United States' fault. If you got to do homeschooling and you're tired of it, it's not the president's fault. It's your governor or senator's fault. It's that simple. If you lived in a fucked up community, it's your governor or senator's fault. It's not the president's fault. Your president has nothing to do with that. All he does is basically pass down a mandate saying he basically passes down things saying we should do this, that, and the other. It's up to your governor or senator to actually key to that shit. And if your senator or governor is the opposite party of the actual president, 9 times out of 10 or 10 out of 10 times, they probably aren't going to pass down the shit at all. It's that simple. You can't keep blaming or making pleas to somebody that has no power or bearing over the actual state. At the end of the day, what a lot of Americans forget is this whole entire thing called states' rights. The president can say any fucking thing till he's blue in the fucking face. If the person that's in charge of the state doesn't feel as though they want to do that or feel as though they need to do that, it's not going to happen. It don't matter who the president is. It happened under every single last president, no matter how you look at it. Let it be Clinton, let it be Obama, let it be Bush, let it be the first Bush, let it be Reagan, let it be every single president has faced this problem in history. I mean, there's very few that got around it, but most of them pretty much faced this problem in history. It don't matter who you are as a president. There's always going to be this thing called states' rights. It's kind of like how various states can like make rules on what's legal, what's not legal, but at the end of the day, the federal law always trumps state law. But federal really don't really tend to exert power over states for the most part. That's typically how that works. They let the states govern themselves in the manner that they're willing to, abides by the as long as it abides by the legal and other crazy shit for the most part. At the end of the day, it don't matter how much you want to cry about homeschooling your children. It don't matter how much you want to cry about everybody losing their jobs. It don't matter any of this shit because, quite frankly, your state's the one who controls the lockdown. Trump has nothing to do with the lockdown. It don't matter what president it is. It don't matter. It don't matter if it's Obama. It don't matter if it's Clinton. It don't matter if it's. It don't matter who the fucking president is. Hell, it don't matter if the president's fucking Aunt your mama. If she writes, she can only suggest the states to do something, and it's up to the states and the people in charge of those states to actually follow through with what he or she suggests. It's that simple. So all this rhetoric about writing letters to the president about you're getting tired of homeschooling your children. Hell, I'm tired of homeschooling my children, but you don't hear me bitching about this shit. But at the end of the day, I can't blame the people in charge because I got to homeschool my children. It's just that simple. I can't blame the president because I got to homeschool my children. I have to blame the governors and senators because I got to homeschool my children. Because at the end of the day, the president has nothing to do with the fact that Your school is closed in your neighborhood, or all the places are working at minimum. All the businesses are working at minimum capacity. He has nothing to do with that. It's your state representative, your governors, your senators, your congressmen, your mayor that all has power and bearing over if a restaurant opens fully, if a restaurant opens partially, or if a restaurant doesn't open at all, or any business for that matter. That's typically how that works. But a lot of people in America forget that shit, and it always slips their mind, and they always got to go to the top. There's a reason why it's called the chain of command, because people don't know how to follow the fucking chain of command in America. That's why they got a chain of command, and it's all listed out basically for you to tell you how this shit's supposed to work. You don't go all the way to the top to get shit done. You work your way up to the top. If your governor and senator aren't following what you want, you basically go up another level. Your congressman and all of them, you go up another level to the House and Senate. And 9 times out of 10, all them motherfuckers that's not following your shit or not doing what you want are sitting in a House and Senate, which means it's your job to vote them motherfuckers out of House and Senate so you can actually have a better life, or to get your point across for the most part. Because at the end of the day, they basically do it to enrich themselves, basically, or they do it to make themselves look like better people. And the sad part about that is, what's the word I'm looking for that we always talk about in the manosphere about not pleading ignorance. Basically, they're able to plead. Your governors and your congressmen and your senators are able to plead ignorance by saying, "Well, it's not our thing." Well, no, it is your thing. You run the state. It's only his job to suggest that we open shit or anything like that for the most part. Because I remember when they were talking when he actually made a bill that that religion is essential. A lot of the Democratic states still kept churches closed, and they enforced the law, so you can't go to church or a synagogue and or any type of worship for the most part. That's the sad part about that. Like, all your representatives basically keep on enforcing that shit. But the president said that religion is essential to everybody who wants to practice their religion. But it's up to the states to actually follow this. And the sad part about that, there's a lot of states right now that aren't following this executive order. Is it the president's fault? No. He can only suggest what your state could do. It's not his job to ridiculously micromanage states for the most part. His job is basically to run the country. The states, the people in charge of the states that's their job to actually do this. That's their job to actually practice this and carry out this whole entire task and goal. Unfortunately, we got a lot of dumbasses and a lot of people with self-interest and personal gain to make somebody look bad in office that they don't want to do it. Nor do they want to actually follow the rules and things along the lines of that. And this shit pisses me off when I hear people say this stupid shit. It's not the president's job to micromanage your country, your state. It's his job to basically set the tone and make the rules so the states can actually follow it. And the sad part about that is you got a lot of stupid people that'll say a lot of stupid shit thinking that it's okay and thinking that it'll change when it's really not okay, nor would it change. That is the overall problem with a lot of people. Just because you want something, that don't make it attainable. Just because you want the president to do something or you plead with the president to do something, that don't mean it's going to come to fruition. Because at the end of the day, it's your state's responsibility to respond to you. It's not the president's responsibility. It'd be no more different than like owning a business. And the president's the president of the company. You don't go straight to the president of the company because you have a problem. You go to your manager, which will be your mayor. Then you would go to his manager, the person above him, which ends up being like the a senator or a governor or councilman or something like that, basically. Well, not councilman, senator or governor, basically. And if they don't follow suit, then you basically go to the House and Senate. And if they don't follow suit, then you work your way up to the president then. Or you go to the courts. Because in all technicality, if you go to the courts, everybody has to listen to the court. And basically everybody has to abide by the rules. Because at the end of the day, What this actually is abuse of your rights. And it's against the law to abuse your rights. If you want to be able to send your children to school, it's your right to want to send your children to school. However, something I always find funny in America is if your child don't show up to school, guess who's getting arrested? So it needs to be a two-way street when it comes down to it. That's typically how that works. It's not the president's fault that your schools aren't open. It's your congressman's fault or your senator's fault that your school's not open. Same goes for if your school closes. It's not the president's fault your school closed. It's your governor and senator's fault or your mayor's fault why your school closed. That's typically how it works. The government basically, the president signs a bill saying pass down this money to all these people, basically, and all these different entities that need it. It's up to your state to actually allocate those funds properly. And if they're not allocating those funds properly, shit's going to fall apart. That's typically how that works. Shit's going to go elsewhere. Shit's going to go in people's pockets. Shit's going to go wherever it doesn't need to go for the most part. But people miss this, and people don't seem to understand this shit. And that shit pisses me off when I hear this shit all the damn time. It's not the president's job to do this. It's your governor, senator, mayor, and all these people who make these retarded ass rules for this shit fault. And it's their jobs. And the sad part about that, like I said, no matter who was president and no matter who the sitting president was, if the opposite party is in power or if the opposite party is running that state, they're not going to comply by the rules. Good example of that everybody seems to sweep under the rug, especially Democrats, especially Republicans and Democrats that seems to sweep under the rug, is during the Obama administration, he basically handed out subsidies for Obamacare. I'm not 100% on board for Obamacare, but I'm willing to call bullshit when bullshit is out there. So there were several states that decided that they didn't want to take any of these subsidies. So what happened with that was the Obamacare or Affordable Care Act ended up costing more money because they didn't want to accept the subsidies. That's typically how that works. It's your governor or senator's job to make sure that he or she could pass down a proper savings on to you. And if they don't take the subsidies, well, guess what? It's going to cost a shit ton of money. And that's basically what a lot of people did during that administration. That's pretty much what they did. They basically decided that they didn't want to take the subsidies, and it made it look like it was so expensive that it was ridiculous, that it was a pointless bill, when in fact, all they had to do was accept the subsidies. And it would have made it cheaper, so phenomenally cheaper for a lot of people. If your state doesn't accept the subsidies, then you're not going to get the good affordable costs that it claims to actually afford to you. That's typically how that works. And the sad part about that, a lot of the governors and senators who actually didn't accept the subsidies were Republican states during this whole entire administration. That's typically how that works. Another good example of that is when Bill Clinton was in office. Now, a lot of the Republicans went against this whole entire thing with the whole entire, war on drugs and war on other things and, incarceration and shit along the lines of that. The Republican senators were totally against it. They were like, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. Not in my state. Now, don't get me wrong. There's some that actually went through with it because it sounded fun to them. But there's predominantly most of the Republican senators and governors didn't really apply this rule across the board. Because at the end of the day, during the Clinton administration, a lot of niggas got arrested. And a lot of niggas was pretty much caught up in some bullshit because of it. Because of the bill that he passed. A lot of Republican senators was like, you know what, that sounds like some shit that I'm not trying to deal with my constituents. It's that simple. That's some shit that I'm not willing to deal with my constituents. That's what a lot of Republican senators said. Oh, all the Democratic senators and governors, they were on board for this shit. Niggas got locked up. Niggas got put under the thumb. Niggas went to jail for being associated with motherfuckers who sell drugs and or other things like that. Matter of fact, I remember a time when I actually was going to school to be when I was going to medical school in Pennsylvania. I mean, not yeah. When I went to medical school in Pennsylvania, and like a few other, there was apparently a rule that was in place before I went to school there that was brought up in during the Clinton administration that basically said if you do anything like lawyer or um medical or anything like that, if you're associated with somebody who's a drug dealer, known drug dealer, or a criminal, you can't go to school for these topics or these subjects for the most part. Like, think about that shit. So I had to actually get rid of a shit ton of friends so I can actually attend school. And the sad part about that, I couldn't just get rid of my shit ton of my a shit ton of my friends for the year for the time before school. I had to get rid of them for a whole entire year or so, year to 2 years basically, just so I can go to school. Like I had to really ditch a lot of friends for about a year or so I can actually go to school for that topic because I couldn't be associated or have the knowledge of me actually being friends or knowing these people. Hell, I had to quit my job as a bartender because my job as a bartender brought me into contact with a lot of these people. That's typically how that bill worked against me for the most part. And the sad part about that, they recently got rid of that bill in Pennsylvania, and they recently got rid of that bill. They recently got rid of that stipulation in a lot of the other states and for colleges for the most part. But the sad part about that is I had to wait like a almost 2 years to actually go to school for something I wanted to go to school for, all because of a rule. You see what I'm saying? So it's not the president. I mean, don't get me wrong. The president was the one who actually wrote this bill. I mean, signed this bill. But at the end of the day, it's your governor or senator's choice if they want to enforce this bill. That's typically how it works. But a lot of people look the other way and they always want to blame somebody or they want to blame the person at the top when in fact he actually wrote a bill saying he wrote a bill basically saying he wants to consider religion as an essential part of American society for the most part. And the sad part about that, what do the Democratic governors and senators do? They send the police into these places so they can arrest you for worship. Not the Republican ones, the Democratic ones send the people into place. They send cops. They literally send cops to come break up church. That kind of reminds me of back in the day when people used to congregate and they used to send militias and or people with well-armed people to go break up worship for the most part, or go disarm worship or go disband worship by force. That's literally what these governors and senators are doing in these democratic states. If you go to church and a cop show up, you can't blame Trump. It's your governor, senator, mayor's fault for why you do it. Because at the end of the day, Miss Lightfoot over there ain't Trump. She's the one that's enforcing this shit. Or where the fuck her name is, Lightfoot or whatever the fuck her name is. And the same goes for that one chick in that one state in the South that literally is enforcing this shit that you can't congregate or you'll get arrested, basically. Like, these are all democratic people. Like, think about this shit. So, I'm gonna need everybody to stop and think before they open their mouths from here on out. The president can only suggest things to your states. It's your state. It's up to your state, the person in charge of your states, or a person in charge of your cities, or the person in charge of your counties, and or let it be left side, right side of the state, whoever's in charge of it, basically, and your state's representatives to basically make that happen for you, or make it so that it's actually a thing. That's typically how that works. It's not the president's job to stand there behind a governor or a senator to tell them that you need to do this and you need to do that. His job is mainly just to pass a bill and sign it and hope and pray that your governors and senators are actually going to abide by these rules or abide by what he wrote into thing or executive order, let it be a bill or an executive order. He can only hope that they follow the shit. That's typically how that works. So stop and think before you actually do stupid shit. Or stop and think before you actually Well, they're not really militias; they're police officers, and they're acting like militias at this point in time because they're literally arresting people for going to church, literally. Um, in certain states and certain places, for the most part. Um, so they're acting like militias, and not they're not act, they're acting less like police officers and more like militias when they go and do shit like that, especially when it comes to religion. Like that looks bad on you for the most part. That looks bad on people when you do that shit, and it's typically how that works. Um, if you have a problem with something that's going on in your state, you should talk to your mayor, governor, senator, or state representative about the shit going on in your state. That's who's in charge of your state. It'd be no different than a company or organization. Our organization has a person at the top, but there are people who run these different departments. Talk to that person who runs that department. If the person at the top says, I'm gonna hand out benefits to everybody all the way down to the bottom, and your person in charge of your department argues against handing down benefits or doesn't apply those benefits, it's not the president's fault. It's the person in charge of your department's fault, which pretty much means the department would be your state or your city or your locale or your county for the most part. That's pretty much how that works. That's the person in charge. You got your you got your person in charge of your your department. You got the person in charge. You got the person above him that's in charge of your region. Then you got a person above him that's in charge of the whole entire thing. That's typically how politics work, just like business. But yeah, it's pretty much how that works. Um, yeah, at the end of the day, Corey, still, you're pretty much missing the point. The police were basically sent to basically break it up. That makes them pretty much a militia at that point. If they're going to enforce a rule that the senator, I mean, that the mayor of that town doesn't want them congregating for church, that pretty much makes them a militia. Illegal, especially if it's sanctioned that they're it's 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 an essential because in all technicality, at the end of the day, religion is kind of essential to a lot of people in the United States. They use religion for hope and inspiration to actually better themselves and go on about their merry way. It almost has like a psychological. I'm gonna tread on this lightly because I am religious, but I'm gonna tread on this lightly because I'm going to offend a few religious people. It has a psychological it has a bit of a psychological placebo effect on people when they can actually worship and enjoy their worships for the most part. That's typically how that works. Um, it's not rogue if your mayor or your governor is actually telling them to do this shit. It's not rogue in the least bit. Now, if the cops are doing it like some of these cops around here are doing stupid shit, that's one story. If like that'd be rogue then. If a cop decided that I'm going to shoot up 9 people and make it home to my wife, even though I'm supposed to be like just making sure everything's safe and this protest is safe. If he decides to shoot up the whole entire protest, that makes him rogue. If your mayor or senator tells you, your mayor, senator, or governor tells you to, by any means necessary, do what you need to do, that don't make them rogue anymore. That just makes them dicks for following orders for the most part. That's typically how that works. But at the end of the day, like I was saying, there's a person in charge of your actual department. There's a person above that person. Then there's a person above that person too. Corey, still, I'm not going to argue this point with you. It's the same fucking thing. They're basically they're pretty much a well regulated militia at that point. That's actually doing somebody's bidding. It's no different than any of the countries who made a special police to go police shit, or any of the ones that made a special army just in case that army doesn't want to comply with that with the rulings or the leader for the most part. It's no different. It's a militia within itself. It's a militia, and especially because at the end of the day, it basically is well regulated, and they all got guns. So yeah, So it fits within the constitutional rights when they do this shit to you. That's typically how they make it work when they can actually enforce this shit onto you. Because at the end of the day, you going to church is you going to church. You're not being allowed to go to church isn't a law in the least bit. So people can actually enforce that shit. You're going to need somebody. No, trust me, it fits well. It fits well. It fits very well. When you can send the police officers to go break up church, that's a militia. It'd be no different if people decided to make a militia to protect them while they go and worship and have a militia outside waiting for the police to show up. It would be a militia either way. There would probably be a lot of gunfight and a lot of gunshot, or there probably would be like a lot of, okay, you know what, they bought their own little thing here. We can't do anything about it unless we want to, make ourselves look bad. That's typically how that works. The only way to combat that is if you were to have your own little militia to guard you while you worship in your place of worship, which makes it a militia. It does fit. In the grand scheme of things, it fits. You're just missing it right now because you're in the chat right now. It fits. Trust me. Because you can't tell me that people just following the rules isn't a militia, or people that are going along with shit just to go along with shit isn't a militia. Hell, there's been a lot of people that form militias because they thought their idea was a great idea. Come to find out, it probably wasn't the best way to go about it, and they probably should have did it a little bit differently. At the end of the day, it's still a militia. It's that simple. The whole entire police force as a whole in the United States was built on a militia. For the most part, local police basically was built upon a militia. Let it be the local sheriff's office or anything like that was basically built on a militia of sorts to basically police that neighborhood or that locale or anything for the most part. That's typically how it works. But I done drug this on too long. Y'all have a good one. And if y'all have problems with anything going on in your state or your locale, talk to your governor or senator. If they don't listen to your ass, get rid of their ass when the election rolls around the next time. That's typically how that works. Basically, yeah. How it works is if your governor or senator or your mayor ain't doing what you need them to do properly, when the next election rolls around, get rid of their ass. It's that simple. Get rid of their ass. Show them who's boss when you go to vote. Because if you vote for them again and they get back in office, you're the dumbass. You're the dumbass for voting for them to get back in office. You can't blame nobody else but yourself if that person that did you wrong before is back in office. That sounds like some Stockholm syndrome shit that you need to get over. That's typically how that works. So if they're abusing their power and are not doing what you want them to do, or doing what you believe that they should do as your representative, your governor, your mayor, your senator, vote them out of office when their term comes around. It's that simple. And at the end of the day, no matter how you look at it, there are good militias and there are bad militias. There are people that think they mean well when in fact they're going against a narrative, or sometimes there's militias that form against opposite that think they're actually against other people because they think that they got the opposite view when in fact they have actually the same damn view, but they're just arguing it differently. So militias can be good and militias can be bad at the end of the day. There's no good or bad militia. There's either you're doing this because you want to advance somebody's rights, or you're doing this because you want to be selfish and advance your own rights. Or you're doing it because you believe that you should be able to enforce. Yeah, like you just said, Corey, your voters are responsible for the actions of the winners of the election. That's right. That's true. So if the person in charge decides that they want to do stupid shit's going to happen in your locale. It's that simple. You can't absolve them of anything. You can't absolve the voters of anything because at the end of the day, you're the reason why they're in office. You're the reason why we keep perpetuating this shit. If you keep voting for that motherfucker, all this shit's going to always happen to you or happen even if you don't want it to happen for the most part. That's typically how that works. That is typically how that works. But like I said, I done drug this on enough. Y'all have a blessed day and think before, when you go to the polls, think of all the shit that you got put through and then vote properly for the shit that you don't want to be put through again. Because 9 times out of 10, it's basically like an abuser. If they abused you before, they're probably going to do it again. If they abused your rights or abused your shit or abused the power that they did before 10 out of 10 times, they're probably going to do it again. It's that simple. But I digress. Have a blessed day.